Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Sandy and Friends. I'm Susan Court, Development Director for the Hershey Symphony Orchestra, and I'm very pleased to have joining me tonight Dr. Sandra Dachau, who is our Music Director. Hi, Sandy. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. And also Jennifer Meckler, who may be a familiar face to many of our Hershey Symphony Orchestra fans. Jennifer began her career with the Hershey Symphony Orchestra back in festival strings, and she's had quite the musical career since then. So we're going to look forward to talking with her a little bit this evening and learning more about her experiences with the Hershey Symphony Orchestra, some maybe behind the scenes stories about working with Sandy, and also what she's doing now. We're also going to bring on some guests from the Hershey Symphony Orchestra who are music teachers like Jennifer, and we're going to talk about teaching in this very challenging time of COVID and what it means to be teaching music and how that's impacting this generation of children who are learning music. But before we get started, I just wanted to make sure that we took some time tonight to thank our sponsors. These sponsors are our companies and organizations that sponsored us during the 2019-2020 season, including our platinum sponsors of Highmark Penn State Health and the Hershey Company. Our gold sponsors, McQuaid Blasco, attorneys at law, and Cornwall Manor. Our silver sponsors, the Law Office of Stephen A. Stein, UPMC Pinnacle, Mabel Tang Piano Tuning and Repair. And our bronze sponsors, Hershey Entertainment and Resorts, the Hershey Rotary Club, Country Meadows Retirement Communities, Hershey Trust Company, Members First, Manja Manja Italian Grill. And also, as you know by now, we did have a fabulous fundraiser plan for May that we postponed till October, and sadly we had to cancel due to the pandemic. And we had very generous sponsors who allowed us to keep their contributions to put toward the general operating expenses of the symphony. And they include Highmark and Penn State Health, the Hershey Company, McQuaid Blasco, M&T Bank, and Country Meadows Retirement Communities. So we want to thank them for their support in keeping the music going, especially during these challenging times. So we want to thank you all, and Sandy and Jennifer, thank you again for joining us. It sounds like the two of you go way back.
Well, for me, more way back than Dr. Dachau.
So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your beginnings with the Hershey Symphony Orchestra, and you let me know. We have some fun pictures we want to show to surprise Dr. Dachau. So when you're ready for those, you just let me know and I'll bring those up.
Okay, I don't know what order they're in, but we'll just bring them up and have fun with them.
All right, I think they are in probably most recent to then the way back pictures. So.
Okay. So here's a more recent photo from last November. We did an Escape the Room in New Jersey, because now Dr. Dachau and I are both located in New Jersey. And you can see Mrs. Lynn Sten there as well in the purple shirt. So Mrs. Lindsten is actually the person that asked or encouraged me to join the Hershey Festival Strings when I was in probably 6th grade. And that changed everything. So I went and I had a close cello friend that we went to rehearsals. And at first we were honestly quite terrified of Dr. Dachau.
Good.
But we were hooked like immediately. And I know personally, it was the first time as a viola player in my long career of having played for 2 years since 4th grade that I felt important in the orchestra, and that Dr. Dachau I just made my part not feel useless, which is how I normally felt in the school orchestra, is that I didn't matter. Even though I really loved the viola and its sound, I was not psyched about its role apparently in the orchestra, but Dr. Dachau changed all of that. And I was also pretty immediately intrigued by her conducting and how much of a difference that made compared to other teachers I had experienced, as well as the arrangements. I just kind of had like a vague awareness that all of this was important and game-changing from early on, and I was hooked to sort of find out more. And a bajillion years later now, well, not really a bajillion, but now Dr. Dachau has been my thesis advisor and sort of shared some of the secrets with me about arranging and has trained me in conducting. So I think I've accomplished some of the goals I set out to learn as a little 6th grader. So,
well, let's take a look at the rest of these pictures from your scrapbook, and then we'll talk about some of these stories.
Go back 1 second. Let me identify everyone there. From the left is myself, and I'm trademarking the hair color, as you can see. I could have called it sterling silver, but I'm going to call it stainless steel. because that sounds stronger. Okay, we have Lynn Sten holding the sign. We of course have Jenny in the middle. This is Sue Owen Anderson. She's also a graduate of William Patterson and has so many students. I mean, she's just an amazing teacher. And then another amazing teacher flanking the group at the end is Betsy Malashevsky, who is one of, every ASTA conference, she's giving sessions that are well attended. ASTA meaning American String Teachers Association. And she's one of the best school teachers I have ever met. So we're in great company, and we managed to get out of the escape room in an hour.
Phew. Well, that's good.
That was the deadline that we had to make. And I think we didn't have anything to spare either.
Well, let's go through the rest of these photos, and you and Jennifer can tell us what we're looking at.
This is from the January 2000. What year did I have? 17?
Right, that's 2017. You're absolutely right. That's in Philadelphia.
Yes, that's the conductor.
If you look, Yannick, and please pronounce his name for me because I'm going to mess it up.
I always get it wrong.
Okay, well, conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra and music director of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. I don't know what he does in his spare time. Those are two amazing jobs, and he is one amazingly wonderful person as well as a fine musician. I'll share a story with you, a conductor story, Jen.
Go for it.
It's at the professional level, it's not a secret that the orchestra players get kind of jaded. They're bossed around by conductors every week, and they don't always have a soft spot for these conductors. And I saw his first performance in New York at the Met of Flying Dutchman when he was still music director designate there. And they did the entire opera. This is a Wagner opera without intermission, just straight through. So he's on the box for a good 3 hours, and the musicians are in the pit playing nonstop. Now, normally, if you look in the pit, once the final curtain has come down, it would clear out faster, than the school bell ringing. Everybody wants to get to the parking garage and get their car and get home before it gets clogged up with all the opera goers. But this particular time, the musicians are in the pit, they're watching the stage, everybody's taking their bow, and finally the conductor and the stage director are invited on stage to take a bow. And at that moment, this touched me so deeply. All the musicians had different color roses, long stem roses, and they threw them onto the stage to honor their new conductor. Wow. That speaks volumes. It was a privilege to watch that happen. I went home feeling so, how can I say, elated, validated from that gesture, even though it wasn't aimed at me by any means, but just the fact that such a gesture could take place in what is otherwise, a really grindy existence. The Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, I have neighbors who play in it. It's the hardest job in the business. You play long services, longer than the symphony services, and you're rehearsing one opera in the morning and performing a different one at night on some occasions. So those folks really, really work so hard. And it's easy to kind of start resenting the person who's on the podium just because they're there. And the fact that they express themselves in such a positive way. So yeah, look at that big smile he's got. He's the one standing in the front row alone. And he's one wonderful guy.
We're going to have to remember that when we all get back on stage at the Hershey Theater, that we will find some roses for you, Sandy.
Oh.
That would be wonderful.
All right. What are we seeing now, Jenny?
So that's me conducting Festival Strings this past February, which seems like years ago at this point.
It does.
Or no, just this February of this year.
Right. It still seems like years ago.
It does seem like years ago.
It was BC before COVID, so it seems like years ago.
Good expression.
Yes. And so, yeah, just having the opportunity to conduct in the Hershey theater and work with these students was fantastic.
You'll notice she has the same bad habit that I have. She's rolling her eyes back as she listens. And I have been so raked over the coals for that by teachers, because we're supposed to keep our eyes focused on the players. And that's my gesture. It's like I'm listening and your eyes kind of go up. That's a neural neural linguistic signal that you're listening, but we're supposed to look at the players. So Jen, we both have to work on that.
Hey, make sure you tell everybody that that was a rehearsal, so they don't think only one person comes to our concerts.
or that Jennifer conducts in a puffy vest and a top.
Right,
so.
right. And Dr. Dacko, with your comment with the eyes, I do think though in that rehearsal there was a giraffe playing at the back of the second violin section.
I always have an excuse. So you've learned from the best.
So Jennifer, what was that experience like for you, thinking back to when you first played on that stage in 6th grade, and now here you are conducting the same orchestra that you got your start in?
I mean, it's mind-blowing because I remember everything so vividly because it always meant so much to me. Like in 6th grade, I remember my first time down in those hallways under the stage and backstage, and I was at the time, totally immersed in Harry Potter, and I 100% thought I was in Hogwarts, and I was so enamored with the entire theater, and the theater itself is just gorgeous and really brings out the imagination with the ceiling and the clouds going by. I just adored it all. And then I also remember playing on it in the Hershey Symphony. And I remember my senior year of high school, Dr. Dacko let me sit in the front, I think maybe section leader, to play Brahms, one of the Brahms symphonies. And it felt intimidating to be in the theater and like so up in front, and was such a challenging piece of work and having that leadership role. And then to go on the podium, it just feel like I've been leveling up slowly. But it's been just remarkable. It just means the world to me. So
that's a beautiful story. Now we're going back in time.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so that's me in 6th grade, probably around the time I joined Festival Strings. My pinky on my bow hold needs to be more rounded, but otherwise things look okay. And then can the other picture be seen with the Zoom?
It can, yes. So
Okay.
in the recording, people will see that. It's just being blocked right now by our pictures of the Zoom, but don't worry, everyone can see it. Okay,
so the other picture then is Mrs. Sten and I in our cool polos for the Hershey Symphony Orchestra for the summer concerts. And this was at one of the 4th of July concerts. And I always had so much fun playing those concerts as well. And then, yeah, so here's, I guess the one, this is way back. The one on the left is from 2003. So I would have been in like 8th grade. And these are literally pictures of pictures in my scrapbooks. I was really into scrapbooking in high school. So, and then the one on the right with the pink background is, so in 2006, I was a junior in high school, and Dr. Dacko asked me to be the soloist to open the Festival Strings concert, which petrifies me beyond belief. I am not a solo performer at all. I am a violist. I like to hide and enjoy the music from the middle of the orchestra. She kind of made me do it because I needed to practice and be confident for my college auditions. So it was all worth it in the end, but it was still pretty terrifying. But that picture was taken after the concert, so I'm relieved.
And then this one.
This one is also, I believe, from 2017. That was a busy year, apparently. That's William Patterson University stage. And I brought my high school orchestra to work with Dr. Dacko for a workshop. And we brought her a inscribed sweatshirt that says Dr. Dacko on it. So that's what this picture
I cherish that.
Oh, thank you.
That's a great picture.
But it was awesome to have my students work with her and experience her conducting and teaching.
Well, the two of you have really come full circle. I mean, you think about it. I mean, you've been together for quite a while. And, when you think back, Jennifer, on all the things that the Dr. Dacko and the Hershey Symphony Orchestra have had an impact in your life and in your musical career. I mean, talk a little bit about that. You've already kind of chatted a little bit about its impact, but kind of try to put it in perspective for people watching, the impact that the Dr. Dacko and the orchestra have had on you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when people ask me, well, who's Dr. Dacko or Sandra Dacko? I'm like, well, she's the entire reason I'm a music teacher today. Like 100%, because you got me just hooked into like all, to the conducting, the arranging, the teaching aspect, to the orchestral playing aspect, the bowing styles, like all of it was just like, just presented to me as a little sixth grader, and I was like, oh, I just want to sink my teeth into this forever and ever and ever. And because Dr. Dackow, when she works with students, it's the same as when she works with adults, which was also the most amazing feeling. As you know, people perceive you as a tiny little cute sixth grader, but inside it's like you're furious, you're hungry to learn, you want to take on the world, but nobody seems to see that. And she's one of those teachers that saw that and like treated you like that, and to be treated that way and taught that way was extraordinary. It's just, I didn't have anyone else work with me like that or challenge me in that way. And then to go on and play in the Hershey Symphony, that was incredible to meet adults who kept music in their lives, even if they weren't music professionals. That was an awesome example to see that in action. And Hershey Symphony rehearsals for me Thursday nights were 100% a therapy. Like when I was stressed about a math test or SATs or whatever, stupid stuff was going on in high school, I was just like, just get to Thursday, just get to rehearsal, and then I can just push it all out and just experience the music with a room of people who didn't have to be there, and a room of people who were there and working so hard, not just there being like, I'm gonna play, but like, I'm gonna work at this. And that was so cool. And now when I chose the evening for my own symphony that I lead now, I mean, it kind of worked out with, well, when's marching band? Don't do that night. But it worked out to be Thursday, and I was like, this is perfect.
It's perfect, right?
Yeah, Thursday to me just means relax, push the world away, enjoy the music, and yeah.
So I know I've talked to a number of our orchestra members who have shared that same thing, that rehearsal was therapy, that it was a time just to be creative and put the rest of the world out of their minds. So I'm sure the rest of them would join you in that feeling. And I'm sure Dr. Dackow would agree that it is therapy.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's been really hard with the COVID, because this is the longest I've gone without like some sort of orchestra experience since I started playing, and like as a 9-year-old, or like, it's crazy. I feel like I've lost part of my identity, lost part of my ability to know how to cope with things. And it's really challenging. So I think these, meetings and things are great to keep the community alive. And I'm grateful in my teaching to be a little bit more back to normal, at least to be making music in person, even if it's not even close to normal, but it's something. And I'm like so much more grateful for it than I would have been otherwise. So.
Well, you're definitely close to the music. You need to duck out of the way and explain what your background is for people who are watching and trying to figure out what is behind you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my literal background. I thought you meant like my...
Oh, no, we're going to get to that. But
Sure.
I think people by now are trying to figure out what is behind Jennifer.
Okay, so I'm going to like duck down and just kind of let people view it.
Okay, we'll give everyone a few seconds.
I'll reveal. So
Okay.
There it is.
Everyone can look. I got this wrong, by the way, but everyone can look and try to figure it out. And your clue is that Jennifer's very close to her music. This is probably not a good clue.
I don't know what a good clue would be, but it's a photo, excuse me, of the inside of a violin. So you can see the F holes on top with light coming down, and that's the bass bar, I believe. There's no sound post. We've established I'm the sound post here.
That's fantastic.
There's a series of photos like this. I forget the photographer, but if you just Google inside of a violin, there's a bunch of photos like this with awesome like lighting, and they added sort of smoke to catch the lighting, and it's quite cool.
Well, it is very cool, very beautiful. So you were talking about your real background. So take us from when you left Hershey Symphony Orchestra as a senior in high school. I know where you went, which we bonded over this the other day because you went to my alma mater. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I went to Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York, and I studied, as well as you, and I studied music education, and I did a minor in art history as well, just for fun. And I had an awesome education there, awesome experience. And then my first job teaching was outside of Boston in Canton. And I taught there for 3 years. That was elementary strings, middle school strings, and like string lessons in orchestra, middle school general music. And then I started a middle school full orchestra as well after school. So that was really awesome. And then I decided to move to New Jersey and take a job to teach high school orchestra. And then when I moved to New Jersey, I partly honestly moved to New Jersey because I knew Dr. Dackow was there.
Oh.
I'm following you. And I was like, oh, then I can study conducting with Dr. Dackow because I know she works at William Patterson University. So then I worked with Dr. Dacko over a number of years, I guess like 5 years, to slowly complete my master's degree, which was also in music education with a focus in conducting. So my private lessons were conducting, and my thesis was about arranging for school full orchestras with incomplete instrumentation.
Actually, Jennifer has some good news to share about her own arranging. Tell us what's going on with that.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to have my first piece published.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, even amid COVID, they didn't get to make a recording of the piece because that was right when it hit, but that's okay. But it's with Tempo Press and Lux Music Library, and it's an arrangement I did for my own students out of a need for what they needed. And it's a multi-level orchestra arrangement, so it has beginner parts that are completely open strings, and it has intermediate parts and then advanced high school parts, and you could even play the piece alone with just the advanced parts. And it's an arrangement of the Presto, the summer of Vivaldi's The Four Seasons, and the Presto movement from that. So that's officially published, and I'm very excited about that because, again, as a young kid, ever since experiencing the difference that Dr. Dacko's arrangements made for me as a student and a player, and just knowing if I played something arranged by her, it just felt different. I've always been eager to contribute something of my own to that field of what's available to teachers to use with their students. So,
well, congratulations.
We're
That's
very
great.
proud of you.
So Sandy, let's turn to you for a little bit. And I don't know about you, but I was crying a little bit when she was talking about your relationship together. So how does it make you feel to listen to all this? And you must be so proud listening to her journey.
You know, I had a wonderful teacher when I was at Eastman. He was chairman of the music ed faculty, and he was quite a bit older, a good generation and a half older than I was. But he would talk about something called the golden chain, meaning we are all part of this golden chain. We transmit knowledge and traditions. We get them from each other. We get them from our own teachers. We put them through ourselves so that it's got a part of us attached to it now. We've run it through our own processing, so to speak, and then we in turn pass it on to those that follow, our students, anyone who might fall within our sphere of influence. And as I watch Jennifer work, I'm thinking, you know, the chain will go on. It won't end with any one of us when we're no longer able to contribute or no longer here. It's going to continue, and it's going to just keep getting better and better. What could feel more special than that?
That's well said. Well, as you've touched so many lives, Sandy, and now Jennifer is beginning to touch lives, we should shift a little bit and talk about teaching in these very challenging times. I know the two of you have lots to talk about, and we want to also bring two of our musicians from the Hershey Symphony Orchestra on with us now. And if Andrew and Priscilla could join us and unmute themselves and put their cameras on, we'll have them introduce themselves, and we'll talk a little bit about how challenging it is teaching. It's hard enough teaching right now, I'm sure, but teaching music is just like a whole other layer of complications. So hi, Priscilla. Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. Let's start with introducing yourselves. Andrew, tell us who you are, what you play in the orchestra, and where you teach.
So my name is Andrew Kurtz. I play in the first violin section of the Hershey Symphony. I teach at Palmyra School District. I teach at both the middle school and the high school. I do general music in the middle school, and I do orchestra at both the middle school and the high school, and I also do some choir at the high school as well.
Wow. How long have you been teaching?
This is my 7th year? Yes, they go quick. I'm sure everyone can tell you.
And how long have you been playing with the Hershey Symphony Orchestra? Do you know?
This is my 3rd year, I believe. This would have been, I should say, would have been my 3rd year.
It still is, so we're going to count it. So, and Priscilla, what about you?
I currently am teaching at Penn State, and so I'm coming at this whole virus thing from a different viewpoint. I have a lot of private students, and that has been very challenging because everything has been online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like she mentioned about her little finger on the bow. I was just working with a girl the other day, and that is really hard to do online because they look at their hand like this, you know, and it's like, what's wrong with my little finger? Yeah.
And what do you play at the Hershey Symphony Orchestra, and how long have you been involved?
Okay, I play the violin, and I've been there about 4 or 5 years, I think. Yeah, that's pretty close. I come from a totally different background, though, than most of the people here, because I was Philadelphia born, and I went through with Louis Wershen. I'm sure Sandy probably knows.
Oh, the supervisor of music with the Philadelphia schools.
And he was kind of my mentor. And we did all these wonderful orchestra things and programs. From there, I went to Westchester for my master's and my undergrad, majoring in music ed. Then I taught at Northeastern School District for about 24 years, which is in central Pennsylvania. And then I went down to Maryland, into Montgomery County, where I had the most fabulous orchestras. We even got to play for one of the presidential breakfasts. We got to play so many wonderful places. Teaching in DC is just a totally different experience. And so then I retired, if you could call all my students retired, and then I came up north, and so I'm playing with Hershey. I've done some playing with the other orchestras in the area, like Harrisburg and
York
and Harrisburg, and and Fairfax in Virginia. So I have come from a totally different background. So now I'm on the college level at one level, and then at the other level, I am teaching all these private students.
Let's
Priscilla, no, I'm going to interrupt. Priscilla is a well-known mentor to music school orchestra directors. I met her decades ago. She was giving workshops as a member of the National School Orchestra Association. I went to a number of your clinics, Priscilla, through the years at various either PMEA or MENC conventions. So she has a long history of being a leader in the profession. And we're so delighted you're with us at Hershey now.
Yeah, and it's been very fun, and it's it's a very close-knit community. A very good chance to relax on Thursday night, as already mentioned. So it's been good. I find that with my private students, it's been very interesting. It has opened up a whole new world of teaching because everything is online. My college class was really funny because we started in March. Okay, they shut everything down. So half of my class had in person, and the other half had to do online. And so I had to totally change what we were doing because it was world music. So I teach world music, and we were doing drum circles and showing instruments that we had made and dancing in class. Well, you couldn't do that online. So the students that had to present at that time got very creative. They found things like online museums to go visit. They also found China. I think China was at the Met, something like that. There was a presentation of Chinese music. And so you totally had to change what you were doing. You had to come up with all new ideas that would make the course go. And so they could go to the museums virtually and then come back and report. It was a challenge because it was totally different. With the private students, I've noticed while we were actually in lockdown, the violin lessons and the instrumental lessons were fantastic. All of a sudden, students who I thought weren't quite going to make it, or they were just, playing, blossomed. They got better and better and better. And I think it's because they had time to practice. They really had time to do this now. Unfortunately, now that school has started, I've noticed it's fallen off a little bit because now they have a sport, they have homework to do, and it's not quite the level that it was when we were in lockdown. So actually, in that sense, the lockdown was very good.
Let's talk about what you're all going through in the classroom. I mean, how you've had to adapt and what you're needing to do to keep the students engaged, because the last thing you want to do is lose the momentum. Sandy and I have talked about this before, that Sandy, one of your fears, I think, is that we're going to lose a little bit of a generation of music students if we can't find ways to engage them. So talk a little bit, any of you, about what you're doing to adapt in the classroom and how you're keeping those kids engaged.
Well, I just want to say, at the university level, one of the few classes that you can't really approach from a remote would be things like medical courses or science lab courses where you have to have your hands on something, and really you can do a lot of music. You can do the academic music online. I know that we gave lessons on Skype. It was very frustrating because it would freeze up. It would be out of sync. You'd want to interrupt the student, but the student couldn't hear you interrupt. They'd keep on going. And it was just, I call it, it was like performing brain surgery wearing gardening gloves. You just couldn't get into the level of detail as efficiently as you're used to doing. So that was an enormous challenge. They've managed to figure out ways to accommodate most other subjects, but man, hands-on music making is kind of the last frontier.
I found with the private lessons, if I would just go, I found the same thing. It just blocks you out because you can't both be on at the same time.
Right.
Right. And then I finally realized I was telling the students to stop because I wanted them to stop so I could fix something. And I realized they couldn't hear me. So I now have adapted my teaching. We now do like 2 or 3 lines, depending on what we're doing at a time. We just do a little bit and then they have to stop. And then I talk about those. And if it's okay, we can just go on. But that is definitely a problem. Also, in that time, I would have been doing duets or things like that. And you can't, not really. I did find one other thing though very valuable, because we're out of the district and the competition and going on all those solos and then looking at all these orchestra music that they have. I found that we were able to explore. I started using different things. I have one Chinese girl who just absolutely fell in love with the Butterfly Concerto, the Butterfly Lovers Concerto. I don't know if you know that. I would never have had the time to do that with her had we been on the regular channel. So, and I've been looking at Spanish pieces and all kinds of different things. We did a Pachelbel canon. I took them all right out in front of my house and we just lined up out in the street and we played the Pachelbel canon, which went very well. So it's just looking at things a little differently because you have to keep them engaged. I now have to think of things now that they're back in school. It's a little bit harder.
Yeah, I think personally, the real challenge is getting ensemble stuff done. I think private lessons actually work relatively well online. You haven't lost much other than the ability to physically change a student's hand, put your, press the wrist down yourself, move a finger around. And while those are the quickest ways to fix problems, they're not always the best way to fix a problem. So I think private lessons are actually affected the least by the lockdown. I have found the most difficulties obviously with making an ensemble work online. I've had kids rehearse along with their mics muted and stuff, but it's not the same. Obviously you don't know what the kids are hearing in the other end. You have no idea what they sound like. You're just kind of hoping most of the time that they're doing something. And I know for me personally, because music classes like ensembles are optional, it's this really difficult struggle of finding that middle ground, because your first thought as a music teacher is like, oh, this is great. The kids because we do like a hybrid, half the kids are in each day right now. So you think, oh, the kids who aren't in, they can do theory, they can do listening, they can fill in all these holes I've never had time to fill in because we had to get all this music because we're not going to have a performance most likely. So it's like, oh, I got all this time. But the truth is, if you give a kid a giant packet of theory stuff to work, they're going to hate it, and then they're not going to continue the ensemble because all they can think about is the fact that I made them do a packet that was 40 pages of theory work, So it's finding that middle ground of like, the kids are there to play. We all have to realize that a big part of it is that social aspect, that spending time with their friends, with you as a teacher. They're not necessarily, especially a run-of-the-mill kid in an ensemble. they're not necessarily there to be the best musician. They're not there to go on and be an orchestra person, as much as we'd all love them to be, and as much as you hope you inspire them to do that. Truth is, a lot of the kids just enjoy being in that group, enjoy that social aspect of it, and making music is kind of a secondary thing for them. So I know I talk to my wife all the time, who's also a music teacher, finding that middle ground of, I need you to be the best you can be, but maybe the best we can be is not, it's just not the best nowadays. You know, it's just going to be less. And we have to like find a way to accept that and find how to get the most out of the kids without kind of burning them out, you know, like a faster speed than we're used to.
Yeah, I did a survey at the beginning of the school year and I said, okay, you signed up for orchestra during a pandemic. Thanks. Why? You know it's not going to be the same. Why are you here? And I got a range of answers from people saying, like, individually, continuing to play their instrument provides an escape, provides them a way to continue to feel like they're achieving something. But then they said they're also able to still feel like they're part of something that's bigger than themselves, and that's a shared passion, and that's a group. And in our school district, we're doing a hybrid. And our kids are divided into 3 groups. So I have a third of my students, random instrumentation, of course, they didn't care what instruments the kids play. A third of my students in front of me in person. And then we're live streaming the class to everyone else at home who come in on Google Meet, sort of like Zoom. So I can see everyone on the screen with their instruments and they're muted, but I've set up like a microphone system so they can at least hear the people in the room and then play along with that, which is nice. And I found though that then I usually have to play the missing instrumentation. So if one class doesn't have a cello, I'm playing the cello for class period, or the bass, or I have a 5-string violin that's coming in very handy, because as we're playing along, I'll jump from violin to viola just so the parts can be heard in the room. And in the spring, we did like virtual concerts, and each student sent me an individual recording of themselves playing the part. And it took hours, days to layer them all.
Very time intensive to make that work. And then the product at the end of the day isn't nearly as good as it would be in person. It's like, oh, that's really disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to think William Patterson had a great music technology course, and I actually taught music technology when I taught middle school. So I'm pretty comfortable with GarageBand, and I was able to make it sound pretty decent. And it was enough to just get the kids charged about, yes, there's a final product. There's something we all did and we brought together. And maybe now, I mean, I don't know quite what's going to happen now, but maybe I'll record each little in-person group. Or if I can get everyone together to spread out in the auditorium, like in the house part of the auditorium with masks on, and record whatever that sounds like, we'll see what happens. But I asked them, like, did you want to focus on solo music or theory? And they said, no, we want the ensemble experience, even though they know it's going to be not what it normally would be. Because like you said, Andrew, the social connection is important to them.
Yeah, and I know, like, for our music teacher sat down at the beginning of the year, like, why do kids do our ensembles? And we said, the social aspect of friends, the fact they may like us as teachers, and music. And it's in that order. You know, it's not in any other order. It's social, us as teachers, and then the music. So we're like, these are the things we kind of need to focus on. We can't actually be focused, all the things you want to focus on as a music teacher, like, oh, I have all this time. We could drill bow hold, we could drill finger, we could drill technique. It'd be great. It's amazing. And you do that for 2 minutes and the kids look at you with the laser eyes that they hope your face melts off. And you're like, well, this certainly is not sustainable. I started actually because we use Microsoft Teams. On Teams, you can only see 9 kids at once. I have 30 kids at home. I have 30 or 40 kids at home. So I don't see half of them anyway. So I just have them turn their cameras off. I know they're not doing anything. I'm not dumb. I have them fill out a form at the end of class that says, I heard this, that, and the other thing. You know, these are the things the ensemble could improve on. And then I give them an etude. I actually, because most of my kids can't take privately, so I've started giving them etudes and private lesson material that they can work on over 2 weeks while they're at home. And then I have them submit a video of that to me. And I'm hoping maybe this is a better thing that I can develop skills without killing the kids with, the stuff that's not fun. But still be developing those skills. And we all know we don't usually have enough time to do those extra things. I mean, we do exercise and stuff all the time, but I can never get to an etude and have every instrument play each their own etude. And this gives me the opportunity to be like, here's your bass etude, here's your violin etude. We can't do these in class, but since you're not here anyway, go ahead and do it at home.
Northwestern University put out on Facebook a seating arrangement that they had been using, and it was just fantastic. They were able to use their auditorium. And I think it's still on Facebook, you can bring it up, that they have the students sitting in rows, like every other or every third row, and 3 people apart. And then they said the sound is absolutely amazing when they go to play, because they had players all the way to the back of the auditorium, and they were all seated apart like that. They also tried it with the band. It was an amazing sound. It was really different. It was pretty neat that they got them all to play that way.
That makes me feel really good, because I'm gonna, next Thursday, I'm gonna start trying the rehearsals in the auditorium with my symphony. And I was worried about a sound delay. Like, are we gonna be able to stay together if we're so far apart?
Our
So I'm
band
curious,
does that.
but that makes me feel better. Sorry,
Yeah,
what, Andrew?
Yeah, our band rehearses in the auditorium as well. And I have to tell you, the one bonus about having the kids spread out 6 feet apart, I think it's the first time ever whenever we stop, nobody talks.
They don't talk, right?
They're too spread out to talk. I'm like, this is magical. I said, you must all be talking behind my back all these other years, because now nobody talks because I can hear you. So what does that say? You judging my bald? Like, what are you talking about?
Speaking of judging the bald, Paul
Go,
Messer,
Paul.
our executive director, has just joined us.
Sorry I'm late. I have, every time Jen's in Hershey, we go back and forth with Viola jokes, because of course she's a fine violist. So this is called Stump the Violist. So Jen, are you ready? You're gonna have to see if you can get the punchline to these jokes.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
What if she win, if she gets them?
She could stay with the Hershey Symphony in some capacity. All right.
And if you lose, same thing.
She could stay with the Hershey Symphony in some capacity. What's the difference between a viola and a trampoline?
You take your shoes off to jump on a trampoline.
Right, good. How can you tell when a violist is playing in tune?
Oh, their bow is moving.
Right, good. How do you get a dozen violists to play together?
You shoot 11.
Right.
That's a violent one.
Wow. I think you could find something else to do with the other 11. Ask them to go to the room or
Or
something.
you make them go clean the
Susan,
percussion equipment.
Susan,
or something.
these are the gentle ones. Trust me.
You stop a violist from drowning.
You don't.
No.
You take your foot off their face.
Hey, this is a family show. Come on.
I tell my violist jokes all the time in orchestra, more friendly ones, but they just need to know that it's a reality before they go out there.
Now, you have to understand that Jennifer, while she was at Ithaca, I think you were writing a senior paper on viola jokes, so she's got them.
I wrote a legit research paper on viola jokes, and it got selected to be presented at a symposium. And I found viola jokes from the 1700s.
Yes.
Of course.
Mozart encountered them. Probably he contributed to them.
Probably.
How do you get a dozen violists to play in tune?
But we did that one.
No. Who wants a dozen violists?
Oh, that's the real punchline. Mine was too dramatic. Oh, no.
I would love a dozen violists. My goodness.
Are there no violin jokes?
What?
Yes.
No. This is
Yes.
viola.
No.
Players here too.
What's the difference? Let me see if I get this right. What's the difference between a violin and a viola?
A viola burns longer.
Well,
That's usually in the case.
that's the standard answer. But the answer is there isn't any difference. It's just that the violinist's heads are bigger.
That's
The
right.
instrument looks smaller.
All right, here's my last one. What's the difference between a viola and a coffin?
Oh, a coffin has the dead person on the inside, which is why I chose this background, because I'm not on the outside of the viola. So,
What's the difference? Here's a bonus one. What's the difference between a viola and an onion?
No one cries when you cut up a viola.
She's not on the draw.
Got a comedy routine ready.
And I don't really know where to go from here, actually. So. Thanks, Paul.
And you know, what is so good is that all of us need to be doing this. All of us need to be interacting with one another. Well, telling viola jokes is one way to just bring us back into that world.
Well,
if we're not actually playing 11 violas together, if such a thing is possible. I mean, they might be playing not together, and that's a poor joke because we love viola sections. I love viola sections, and um,
How do you know when the stage is level?
Oh, if the drool comes out both sides evenly on the violist. Wait, I have another Hershey Symphony story, actually. I was in high school. It was 2006 again, I think. Dr. Dackel, I don't know if you remember this. We played in the pit at the Whitaker Center for a group, a eurythmic dance group.
right. I was playing viola. I was the one standing in the back of the section playing.
No, that's my story.
Oh, go ahead. Go
You
ahead.
ruined it, but it's okay. So the eurythmic dancers are on stage doing dance. We were playing the New World Symphony by Dvorak, and you had been conducting all of the rehearsals, okay? And the first concert performance, I'm in the back of the viola section, sort of terrified because I can't really play all the notes, okay? It's Dvorak, and I'm a high school kid.
You know,
But that goes on for like ever. But
yeah, it keeps on going up by a half step every 16 bars.
yes. So what terrified me was all of a sudden I look up and there's a different conductor, and I had only just realized, oh, Dr. Dachau's not conducting the concert. It's the person that works with the dancers. And then all of a sudden I hear a commotion behind me, and I turn around and it's Dr. Dachau with a viola standing right behind me. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna play the viola part. And I just tensed up. I was like, oh no, she's gonna see all of my faking that I'm doing and all the mistakes I make. And I was petrified. But I'm pretty sure you didn't care and weren't watching me like I thought you were.
Yes, I was.
Oh no.
What's the difference between a viola and a radio?
Oh, I might not know this one.
A radio plays music.
Oh,
Sounds like a Metzger original.
I think so. This is a rough group. But from all this taunting and teasing, there's definitely friendship and love in this group. And
Wait. What's the difference between the first stand of viola players and the fourth stand of viola players?
About half a measure.
Oh, it's more than that. It's 2 bars.
Oh, okay.
I wish it weren't true.
Yeah, we all do. No, but you know, it's funny. The viola players know all these just out of self-defense. And I keep telling viola players like the young Jenny Meckler that your generation is going to make these jokes irrelevant because you're
We're
going to be
trying.
you're going to be great players, and you know, Mr. Metzger will you know, throw out a viola joke and everybody will look at him saying, I don't get it.
Okay, one more.
then we go to the drum jokes.
Why do violists have pea-sized brains?
I don't think I know this one either.
I
Because
don't either.
all the alcohol has swelled them.
I don't know that one because it's not student friendly. That's why.
Right, there you go.
friendly
There
at
you
all.
go.
Well, speaking of students, before Paul comes back with any more jokes, what advice would you give to either your students or other young musicians and their families who are trying to figure out, you know, how to weather this storm and find some good through music during these times?
I'm going to answer that first because, and I hope some of these kids are watching this. I told them to watch it tonight. I was trying to figure out how do I teach string methods either online or at a distance of 6 feet. I'm used to, Andrew, like you say, you know, you have your hands all over them because it's just the fastest way to get them to feel something and remember what it feels like. You can talk all day, but it's not the same thing. It's tactile versus verbal information there are times when the tactile will get the job done. And so I got the kids in the neighborhood together where I live, and I said, I've got to figure out how can I communicate to them at a social distance. And there's a little girl, she's in 2nd grade. How do I teach someone to play violin who's never played before and not go near them? You know, we're wearing our masks and everything. And that taught me a lot. And the frustration also that goes with, I could solve this so fast, but I've got to come up with an image or the right words. And we're actually having fun. They were out there rehearsing without me tonight. There's a couple of guitar players and a violin player, and they're having a good time.
That's awesome.
And Priscilla, they're also doing Pachelbel. I've got the guitar players playing the the chord changes. One of them's picking the arpeggios in the background, and we're having a good time. These are things I wouldn't normally be able to do in the course of teaching, because we would just have a different agenda. But right now, we're just having fun.
Well, as we're wrapping up, sorry, Paul.
Why did the violist marry the accordion player?
I don't know this one.
To feel important.
Oh,
that's low. Lowest one of all.
That is low.
All right, last one, I promise. Then I'm going to go for a reel. What do you call a violist with 2 brain cells?
Oh, I don't like this one. I'm not going to say the answer.
Wait, a principal, right?
Pregnant.
Oh, Paul Metzger.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you.
Show
Can we mute him? Can we?
So let's get back to what we were talking about. Let's go to Priscilla next, then Adam, and then Jenny, just to kind of wrap up things tonight, talking a little bit about how to engage young people and advice for them and their families.
Yeah, I think too, the families, sort of like, I'm also a Suzuki teacher. And I find even the older ones that have had that training with the parents' help, this online teaching, it's not just the way they hold their hand, but you would be surprised how hard it is to get a pencil, or how hard it is to count lines. If parents would help and have the books up before the thing starts, and would help them just a little bit, and the listening thing, even with their other things, they can develop their listening more. But this online teaching has made me realize they really need to get more organized. They never can find their page, because usually when you're standing right there, you can help them get to the page. And where is your book? I don't know where my book is. Well, this is your lesson time. It's just general organization, and listening is just so important. One of the youth symphonies in our area got an arrangement of Beethoven's Fifth, and the students had no idea how the piece went. And, a simple recording would do a lot. And so it's hard to teach the material online, but I think a little more organization and a little more, like, even counting measures gets to be a real challenge, because some of them don't realize that those few notes at the beginning are not the first measure. That's a pickup, and so the numbers are off. It just brings up, because when you're standing there teaching them, you can just point, okay, start in that measure, but you can't do that online. They have to figure it out for themselves. So in some ways, maybe it's making them a little more self-reliant. And like I said, we've been able to get off of the standard literature and do other pieces and other things, which I think has been a great idea. A lot of them, went through my files and pulled out pieces that I had done years ago. And I said, okay, let's all get this, or let's get that. And it's been really good to get away from the book or the youth symphony music and then just play music. It's been wonderful in that sense.
Good, there's some positives there. That's wonderful. Yeah. Andrew, what about you?
I would definitely say, as just to remind students especially, that this is like a rare opportunity. Now things are getting started back up, and all activities are starting, but this is one of those few chances in life where you actually have time, and although we don't have the same opportunities as readily available, it's important that we try to self-motivate ourselves to use this time to grow as musicians, especially because you have, like Priscilla said earlier, kids have the time. You have the time to actually sit down with your instrument and practice a little bit. You have the time to develop these skills that perhaps you didn't always have time to develop. And I tell my kids all the time, it's fun to be good at stuff. Nobody enjoys something they're not good at. So the better you get at the instrument, it rewards you. The better you get at, the more you're going to enjoy it, the more then you're going to want to play it, because you're good at it, and then you're just going to get better at it. And you continue to get more access to more challenging and interesting music. You get to meet more people through that process then, because you've gotten better. You're going to be in more orchestras. You're going to participate in more festivals, things like that. You're going to meet people. Those people are going to be on the same path you are, and you get that chance to collaborate with people who are similarly motivated to be excellent. I think there's few things similar to music where you're actually working together to be excellent. It's different than sports where you're trying to beat the other team, where your opponents are people. Whereas in music, your opponent is the music. Your opponent is yourself. So it's like a never-ending journey. I think that's something I love about music is you're never done. It's one of those things you can work at for your entire life. You can become excellent, but you're never the best. And even if you are the best, you could still be better. There's never an end to it. So this is just such a great opportunity if you can. So, and I know it's hard. Believe me, I get it. You know, summer came, we were all trapped inside, and I was like, wow, that couch is just the greatest place in the world, isn't it? You know, and so is the bed. And these places are so wonderful. But if you can like really push yourself to just 20 minutes a day because you have the time, it pays off such dividends, and the rewards in the long run are just really hard to describe. And I know all of us know because we're older and we've done this and we realize how excellent, what an amazing experience being involved in music is, especially after college and stuff. It actually gets even more fun. So like to push yourself to use this time to grow, use this time to pursue your passions. And even if it's not music, this is your chance to pursue a passion maybe you don't always have time for, because we all know how much kids do these days. They do 3 sports, 9 clubs, 6 activities. They have all their AP classes and they play an instrument on as well.
And that's just on Monday.
Exactly. And that's just one day of the week. So it's like, this is your opportunity to pursue the passions that perhaps you don't always have time to do because you're beefing up that resume, trying to get into that great college. This is your chance to pursue that. And adults as well. This is your chance that your 9-to-5 job gives you maybe a couple hours you never had before. You know, pick up that instrument that you played in high school that you don't get to play anymore.
That's great advice. Thank you. Jenny, what about you?
I guess I have more of like an emotional reaction to it all. In my conversations with my students, especially early on when we got locked down and things were just taken away from us that we never really thought could be taken away from us, a lot of them eventually said to me, like, I never thought I'd say this, but I really want to go back to school. Like, I really miss school. And they all said definitely wholeheartedly, like, I miss orchestra. Like, I just miss playing in a room and hearing sound and connecting with people without words and using body language and creating something together. And I've had students, and including myself, who at times during this like ongoing some form of quarantine that we're dealing with, sometimes playing their instrument made them sort of sad. It reminded them of things that weren't happening, friends they weren't seeing, and they had to step away to sort of just cope with everything going on. Other people had the opposite experience. They went to their instrument wholeheartedly just to deal with everything and to get emotion out. And some of them went between the two, you know, every other month or so. So as a teacher, I found, you know, in the spring and even now, I just feel like it's important to be checking in with the students and let them know it's okay if they're actually not going home and practicing this free time. I know students who have, who are dealing with such serious things in their life now, like beyond even COVID, but like COVID is making other serious things in their life that much more traumatic. And my heart goes out to them so much. And if they're too sad or too troubled to practice their instrument hardcore, that's okay. And I just let them know that, because I want them to understand that the instrument, as we all understand, the instrument, the relationship you have with your instrument is lifelong, and it's going to go up and down. Sometimes you're going to play a ton. Sometimes you might not touch it, but you know it's there for you. And it's that friend that's always there for you as you need it. And that's something that we can't really find. I mean, maybe you have a book that sort of acts like that, but it's hard to find that in our lives nowadays. So I've just been continually checking in with the students, like, what can I do for you? How can I meet your needs? What do you need from orchestra? I feel like this whole COVID business has brought us all down to the core of everything. Like, you know, like we said earlier, it might not be about playing this piece, but it's about some core of the experience. And so how can I recreate that for them or remind them that that's still there? It's might be on hold a bit in its entirety, but so I guess I've been taking a more emotional approach, and I encourage students and families to realize that not to drop the instrument, not to give up on the experience, stick with it, because it's really something so valuable for your whole life and for your life as a human. It can really help you through all sorts of things.
That's beautifully said. I wonder too, and Sandy, maybe you can comment on this, if appreciating music now during these challenging times may give musicians, young and old, an even greater appreciation for the joy of music when we return to the ability to be together and play in the same room. Do you think
I'm
we'll
going to
have to-
share with you a story, a school out in Western Pennsylvania. You may have heard this story before. When Flight 93 on 9/11, by this time people knew that it was going to come to a bad end. They didn't know where, they didn't know when. All the schools out in Western PA were on lockdown, waiting for the worst to happen, not knowing when or where. And finally, it did go down. And the Mars area middle school, which is actually the community where the Pittsburgh airport is located, but the Mars middle school, when the plane did go down and the kids were told what had happened, and essentially that they were now out of danger, but like the world was never going to be the same, the kids in the orchestra class said, "Can we play? We need to play." That was something you hung on to because it was a piece of the old world and you needed for it to feel familiar, and you imbued it with something beyond probably what you'd ever injected into it previously. It just took on a whole deeper significance to you, and it came from the very bottom of your being, that I need to make music right now, that's the only way I'm going to feel better. And we need to do it together because we just need to be together doing this. And you can't really say it any more complicated than that, because it isn't. It's just a primal thing. I read that story, I think it was in the Pennsylvania Music Educators Journal, and I was so powerfully moved by that story. If somebody had, I guess it was the teacher from that school, had written in as a letter to the editor, and I just thought, wow, what they needed more than anything else after learning of one of the great tragedies of the century was to play, was to make music together. And they didn't want to go back to doing equations and algebra. They didn't want to go back to any number of things that they could have gone back to, including going to the cafeteria and sitting with their friends. They wanted to make music. And this speaks to how deeply we connect with this, and we connect with doing it with each other. And even as 7th and 8th graders, they knew this, they got this. And so anyway, I think that doesn't speak exactly to what we're going through, but it's good to remember that.
I think the arts have really blossomed in this in a way. I mean, I knew we had a lot of children in this neighborhood where I live. I never saw them because I think they were always inside, they were doing homework, they were on computers. But now with this COVID thing, and they're allowed to go out and play as long as they stay equal distance. Now I'm seeing, you should see the sidewalk drawings, the chalk, they're riding their bicycles, they're playing together. They're outside. It's amazing because they had never done that before.
Well, we have to hope, as I know we all do, that good things will come from all of this. And certainly, I appreciate the time that you've all taken tonight to talk about the joy that music brings to you. And all of your students are certainly very fortunate to have you because you are all very inspirational. So I want to thank you to Priscilla, to Andrew, to Jenny, and to Sandy for joining us tonight. And I hope the rest of the school year is a smooth one, and that there are some wonderful stories that you can share in the years to come of how you taught music differently and how you brought the joy to the kids in the classroom.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
all. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode of Sandy and Friends. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.